Johnny Mac and Jody Mac, Mac and Mac guys, joined by Andrew DiCecco, who I believe is home again. We've had him from the road. He's out and about. He's always doing stuff. Where are you right now, DiCecco?
I'm in I'm just outside of Philadelphia. I'm back home.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think I've seen that background before. But yes, giving you props for being out there on the road. How has your tour of pro days around the Northeast gone?
Yeah, it's been great, Jody. Thanks for asking. I've run into a lot of Eagles personnel, notably Ben Ijolana, who, John, you know, is a Northeast area scout. I saw Amina Solomon at the Temple one. Then I saw Jeff Stoutland at the Maryland one. He was the first guy I saw when I walked right into the building, shook his hand, and he had some eyes on some of the linemen that they have there. And at Rutgers, new defensive backs coach Christian Parker was there to get some looks at Max Melton, actually put him through his workout. So I like going to these things and observing and talking to a lot of people and seeing what's going on, who's there from the Eagles and what I can glean that I didn't see at the combine. Maybe some guys didn't test, and I want to see if that matches what I saw on tape.
You mentioned Stoutland. We'll start there since it's always fun to see the people that maybe don't get a lot of notoriety. Amina's one of them. She was at Temple. Mm-hmm. I know Howie thinks very highly of her. But when Stoutland shows up, it tends to mean something. So Maryland's got a couple potential offensive line prospects. Can you kind of give us a gauge on where they might be for potential Eagles interests?
Yeah, so Delmar DJ Glaze is someone who is probably going to be a fourth-round pick, early fourth-round pick, maybe creep into day two at the back end of it. He can play any position on the offensive line. Was a right tackle last season for Maryland. Probably projects as a swing tackle, I would say. A lot of teams view him as a guard. Then they have a player named Gottlieb, and his last name, there's no chance I'm going to be able to pronounce it. Even when he said, a lot of us asked him, how do you pronounce it? He said it. We still didn't know. But he's someone that's always been playing football for, I believe, 5 seasons, was an NFL Combine invite, was a Senior Bowl guy, immensely athletic, played left tackle for the Terps last season. A little bit more of a project, I would say, but very intriguing. And they had a guy named Corey Bullock, their left guard last season, was an honorable mention player who, I mean, just talking to some people out there, he's someone that isn't getting the notoriety that got a lot of that had a lot of interest. So it was worth mentioning that after the workout, they were gone for 90 minutes doing a meeting with personnel there. So obviously, there's a lot of teams that are going to be interested in those guys, but they were the star of the show for sure.
So let me ask you this question because I absolutely don't know the answer. As a member of the media, show up at a pro day. Do you guys get any access to the players? Are you allowed to talk to them afterwards? Can you request individual players that you want to talk to? How does that work?
Great question. So a lot of times, Jody, they only make certain players available. But if there's a guy that I wanted to talk to off to the side or somebody to that effect, I'll flag down the AD and say, hey, look, are you able to grab this guy for me? I just had a few questions. And sometimes it's just me sort of reaffirming what I saw on tape, asking questions maybe about a previous injury, anything. And so they work. I work with those guys, and they're able to kind of make that happen. And it's funny at Temple, for example, they had Jordan McGee, the linebacker, who was available, and he's the guy that's going to be drafted day 3. His stock's climbing. But there was a D2 guy from Lock Haven University where I spent some time once upon a time who was the guy that everybody was talking about, met with every scout there, running back Chris Collier, ran a 4.48, jumped out of the building and tested really well, has some pro days has some local days coming up. So you could just walk right up to some of those guys.
Very nice.
Max Melton, you mentioned Rutgers a little bit there. That's a guy who's getting a lot of hype recently. And Christian Parker, the Eagles' new defensive backs coach with Vic Fangio, big lengthy kid. Maybe, not that, I guess, it's funny. If you're 6 foot, you're lengthy. If you're under, you're not lengthy. But he looks just his body type. A little bit undersized, though, I would say, as far as weight goes. Where do you project him as any? And by the way, Egg Harbor City, I believe, native as well. So
you're right. So I would say that he's someone that's going to probably go mid to early second round. His stock is soaring. there's a lot of people there that you sort of hear some buzz, and I think that he's somebody that's going to continue to pop up throughout the process as we get closer to the draft. As someone who's going to go higher than some may have expected as we walked into the pre-draft process. But I mean, yeah, his one thing that struck me with him, his legs are like toothpicks, but he has very long arms.
You mean like Devontae Smith?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a great comparison, Jody. They're exactly like Devontae's legs. So you're like, okay. I mean, I don't know how he would hold up on the outside. He's about 5'11", 185. Fluid, smart, tough, competitive, all the things you want. But I think he's more of a nickel player. That's sort of how I project him at the pro level. And I think that that's where his early playing time is going to come. Now, he also takes a lot of pride in playing on special teams. When I asked him about that after the workout, like he can do it all. And he called himself the most versatile cornerback in the draft.
Yeah, a lot of people are talking about the nickels in this draft, Andrew. Maybe, yeah, obviously not at the top, but as far as the depth at cornerback position, a lot of people have said nickel is a strength, and obviously the Eagles have a need at that particular position. Although Avonte Maddox is still out there, that's weird.
It can't hurt to bring him back on a flyer, but I wouldn't promise him anything.
No, I agree with that, but why not? And we assume Isaiah Rodgers will be back, but he could play outside. He's played outside in the past. He could factor in because of his size. I think he could factor inside, but that remains to be seen. And they signed the kid from Las Vegas, Tyler Hall, who's more of a natural slot. So they have some options, but there's no concrete, that's the way we're going to go. So, second round nickel, would that be out of the question for the Philadelphia Eagles? They have 2 second-round picks.
I think that's well within the realm of possibility, John. Look, when you send your new defensive backs coach, and yes, it is Rutgers. It's not exactly you're not going across the country. You're not going across the country to see the player, but put him through his workout. And the sense that I've gotten is that the Eagles really like the kid, and he's someone who has inside-outside versatility, and he can be a plug-and-play guy right off the bat, which is most important, especially when you look at what the Eagles have, as you outlined right now, currently at nickel. They don't have any sure things or slam dunks. Max Melton would be that, and he could potentially grow into an outside corner down the line. But, I mean, you're talking about someone that's going to give you instant production there on a very cost-effective contract is certainly something to keep an eye on.
All right, so I need a projection, crystal ball look at things from you. Eagles take Melton in the second round. Is he off the Eagles by the end of his first contract? Do they trade him after 3 years, or does he actually make it to a second contract? But because we've seen this offseason, if you're a Philly guy, Philly neighbor, you don't last there. Hassan Reddick came and left. DeAndre Swift came and left. Olamide Zaccheaus came and left. Kevin Byard didn't even get a full season in. He only got a half a season left before they ran him out of town. So if Melton comes in, he's going to have a shelf life here in Philadelphia that he's going to have to get out of town. Which will it be? Just one contract, or will he get into contract number 2?
No, he'll be a second contract guy. Again,
okay.
Younger player, a position of value. I mean, there's a lot of things at play here, but also he's someone that can do a multitude of things. Special teams was something that he made it a point to outline that he is not averse to doing and anticipates playing at the next level in addition to his cornerback duties. So I think that there's just going to be too much value there. Also a really high character guy. So I think he'll be somebody that's going to be a cornerstone type of player, Jody, for a defense down the line.
All right. But Jody gave you one of those Philadelphia players, the most high profile, Hassan Reddick, on his way out the door, 90 minutes up the turnpike to Jody's New York Jets. First of all, your thoughts on the trade, and then does that factor in edge rusher 22 overall, in the first round of the draft for you?
Yeah, I was driving back from Maryland when the trade happened, and my phone started going nuts, and I was like, what's going on? And I had to look over, and Hassan Reddick is traded. I was like, I mean, I guess that was that April 1st, $1 million thing that they pushed back was a hard deadline. So, I mean, I had a sense that they had to make a decision one way or the other coming up on today, but I didn't like the trade, guys. I mean, if you're a team with the Super Bowl window wide open, or at least cracked open for the foreseeable future, you want to hold on to as many of those key players, those veteran leaders that you can. And I thought that he deserves, and you agree with me, you guys agree with me, that he deserves to be paid like a premier pass rusher. And the going rate for that, guys, is $22-23 million a season, which the Eagles weren't going to pay to a player approaching 30 who logged a ton of miles last season. Now, to your question, John, in the first round, do I view that as a viable possibility for the Eagles to take an edge rusher? I do, but I even thought that before Hassan Reddick was traded. Again, looking beneath the surface here, it's not a bold prediction to suggest, if you know, as we all do, as we follow the team and pay attention, the Eagles have Josh Sweat, who's likely playing his last season here in Philadelphia. Brandon Graham, this is his swan song in year 15. So the only players that are assured to be under contract for 2025 are Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Zach
Bond, baby.
No, but Bond's only a 1-year contract.
That's true. That's
right.
true.
And then you got Julian Okwara, and probably another 1-year deal.
Yeah, we've forgotten Julian Okwara. That's
so knowing how much the Eagles value the position, guys. It wouldn't be a surprise, but rather an expectation, at least on my end, that you would see that in the first or second round. Also, you have to look at a lot of their pass rush is sort of is on a projection this year. Bryce Huff has never played a large sample size. Josh Sweat wore down the stretch last season. You look at Nolan Smith; he's a huge question mark, and there's injury concerns, and he couldn't even get on the field when the Eagles desperately needed another edge rusher to alleviate some of those snaps from Reddick and Sweat. So really all they've done is swapped out Huff and Reddick. I don't know that you can say that they've gotten better. They've have a lot more question marks there. But I think drafting a premier edge rusher in the draft adds another firepower fastball off the edge and gives you another body there.
I just have to laugh when you say they value the position. Except they don't want to pay Josh what Hassan Reddick has earned. They value it to a point, and then they don't value it at all when they think that, oh my God, he's 30 years old, he's going backwards, he's a declining player. So in certain ways they value it, in other ways.
Well, Andrew's right about the workload, which I mentioned in the first hour.
How many percentage snaps did they play on the other side?
74 and 71. I believe Reddick was 74. Sweat played 71.
And which of those two players looked like a guy who was declining more this past year?
Well, they both, to be fair, went radio silent. But
they both. Yeah.
I mean, Josh to me looked like he was the one that was lagging a little bit more. I didn't see a whole lot of bursts from him. So everyone said, "Oh yeah, they're fine." They're on Twitter. I put out right after the trade, they should be looking to draft a first-round edge rusher. They're fine. They got Zach Bond, which I laughed at because that's a projection. He really hasn't proven that. They got
that's a projection. That's a projection.
Somebody threw that out there. They said they're fine, and they have Zach Bond. I'm like, okay.
And they have Zach Bond. Andrew Van Ginkel, wish.com, Zach Bond. Yeah, I mean, well, and the Eagles are funny with that because they believe that, as you mentioned, the 30-year-old and concerned about the number of reps and wearing down because they knew they rode him pretty hard over the past 2 seasons and he produced for him. And that's just difficult reality of this sport. Saquon Barkley got rode pretty hard by the New York Giants in some bad circumstances with a bad offensive line and a bad quarterback and a bad everything on offense and bad turf on top of it. And they don't seem to care that he's got 1,500 touches under the hood. It's funny with this team when they point out one thing for one player and they say, this is different. Is it? Is it different? I don't know.
It's really not all that different. I mean, I was strongly against trading Hassan Reddick just given – I mean, look, this is someone with 27 sacks in 2 seasons. He's been a consistent giving you consistent production, been a locker room pillar. I mean, that's the going rate. He's not asking for anything out of the ordinary. He deserves to be compensated.
That we don't know. We won't know until he gets a deal done with the Jets. We don't know what his ask number was. My guess is you're going to be right, and it wasn't outrageous. Didn't say make me the highest paid pass rusher in the National Football League. My guess is the number was what you, me, John, and most people who follow the NFL would say would be fair, but we honestly don't know that. The Eagles know that, Josh Reddick and his team know that, and now the Jets know what the number is, but they haven't gotten a deal done yet, which tells me maybe he is asking. Hassan is asking for the moon, the sun, and the stars. What would that number be for you? What do you think the number would be that you say the Jets actually paid that it would be above and beyond, and you go, all right, now I understand why the Eagles had to move on.
24, 25 a year.
Yeah, I'm at 25. I think he asked for 25. And I wouldn't go 25. 20, 21, I think then you're starting to get in the range you should be. If the Eagles could have gotten 18, 19, I think they would have done it. Can't prove that, but I think that's, the razor thin margins. And people say, well, what's the difference if you're a Super Bowl contender?
Well, and by the way, there's no guarantee the guys that he plays over 67.5% of the snaps.
I would expect
Jermaine Johnson. They have John Franklin Myers.
Yeah, they got a lot of depth. Yeah, a lot of depth. Very deep. None of their defensive line, even Quinnen Williams didn't hit that number last year, I believe. No, he just beat it. He was 68, I believe.
Yeah, he barely cleared it, to your point. Yeah,
but that's inside. Quinnen's inside.
Right.
He's inside.
None of their edge guys hit that number.
No, none of their edge guys. Jermaine Johnson was their top edge guy, and he was like 64-ish or somewhere.
Yeah, they're going to use a heavy rotation there, so there's no guarantee that he even comes close to that. And I think we'll be able to. I don't think the sack production will be an issue, but
no, not with that defense. Not with that defense.
And the other thing and I make this as an argument to keep Hassan, but it's just the way the National Football League goes. He never gets hurt. He plays every game. 17 games, 17 starts with the Philadelphia Eagles. Prior to that, with both Carolina and Arizona, he answers the bell. He's there every single game. You almost get the feeling that he's due for an injury. That you don't get to the National Football League for as many years.
100%,
and not have. Yeah, who is that? Zach Ertz, 100% injury.
Yeah, he's not the first one, but
there's a chance he's going to get hurt, which is going to mean there's no chance he's getting 67% of the reps.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't look at it like that, though.
No, you can't. You can't legislate injuries, so I can't worry about that part of it. But if Vic Fangio comes up to you, Andrew DiCecco, and say, you know what, I need my quarter flat defender. I need a guy who can drop in coverage when he needs to drop in coverage, and says, I want a different style of player. You say yes, or you say go F yourself, Vic. I'm keeping the proven pass rusher.
I think he listened to him, because I would have to assume that was part of the agreement when he came over, and say, hey, look, I have to have some input here in personnel for me to be able to execute my defensive vision. This is what I need. Hassan's not as capable as somebody else who could do that, so he's not really going to be a fit. Now, this is just hypothetically speaking here, but I think that Vic's going to have a pretty significant say in personnel, or at least say, hey, these are the positions that I need you guys to make sure that you're honing in on. I have to have better play at safety, have to have better play at linebacker, and my edge rushers have to be a little bit more versatile and fluid in space.
Here would be my response to that question if I were Howie Roseman. I would say, hold on, can I make a call to a buddy, Andrew Berry, general manager of the Cleveland Browns, and ask him if his defensive coordinator came in and said, you got to get somebody better than Myles Garrett coverage.
There's nobody. That wouldn't happen. They don't play that defense.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm talking hypothetically here. If the general manager said that, if Jim Schwartz said, listen, I need a defensive end that can cover, drop in a coverage every once in a while, I tell him, shut up and coach the best defensive end in the National Football League. Make the most out of him. I'm putting it on you to make adjustments, not the best defensive pass rusher.
That's the difference. Myles Garrett and Hassan Reddick, they're in different tiers.
With all due respect to Hassan Reddick, he ain't Myles Garrett.
Right.
And Myles is different, as they say. But yeah, Jim Schwartz is a different type of defensive coordinator. I prefer that type of defensive coordinator, by the way Jim runs his defense, and defensive linemen love playing for Jim Schwartz, and understandably so. And Myles Garrett, defensive player of the year, by the way, this year. So Yeah, he's not dropping him in the coverage.
No.
Now that was one of the biggest overblown things about the Eagles defense last season was how much they dropped Hassan Reddick into coverage. And the problem is they didn't drop Hassan Reddick into coverage a lot. And yet people still lose their minds when they did it, Andrew. So if it's going to increase, and I think it's going to increase with whomever is playing that particular position, are people going to be upset again?
Probably. You know how it is around here, John. Everybody's going to be upset about something. Why not the defensive lineman dropping into coverage? But I don't think it'll be as significant with a player who is more adept at doing that and looks more natural doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously Reddick has shown in his career, earlier in his career, that he really wasn't his forte. So when the whole Hassan Reddick thing was happening and it was such a delay as far as why he wasn't being traded yet, I go back to he's not a scheme fit for everybody. He's not a fit for everybody. It took forever for teams to figure out how to use him and deploy him properly. So it's going to take a certain team that's going to be able to accentuate his skill set, and the Jets are one of them.
I think he'll do just fine in the Jet system. And the whole, if Fangio is going to be dropping his defensive lineman in coverage thing, who's going to be the guy that you're going to use to take advantage of that? Because the whole philosophy behind it is you're expecting this guy to rush. Ooh, he drops back in pass coverage. So you're going to bring someone else because you're not going to bring less. You're going to bring the same number, if not more guys, and actually make it a blitz. Who's going to be that guy? Who's that Eagle player at either the linebacker, cornerback, or safety position who's going to surprisingly come and get to the quarterback and rush and throw or make it a sack, best case scenario? Who's that guy right now? If John is hinting at, well,
they're hoping it is.
When you drop a defensive lineman in coverage, you know that somebody's coming from somewhere else. Either corner, linebacker, or safety.
Gardner Johnson, Nakobe Dean.
Devin White. It's all Devin can do, Devin man. White, goes straight ahead.
Nakobe's good coming off the edge. At least he was in college. So, and Gardner Johnson's that rangy, versatile DB. So those would be my two guys, and Devin White as well.
Yeah. By the way, Devin White, where are you guys right now on a scale of 0 to 100 percentage? Devin White going to be the starter, or are they going to do something else draft wise post June 1st? Give me a number, both of you.
98.
98?
Oh, yeah. You think the Eagles are going to get another linebacker to replace him?
I think
they're done.
I think they might take a linebacker in the second round. Now you can't take everything.
I think you might be right, John. Well, that's why I have it as a 7, not exactly a slam dunk. Right now, they've draft proofed the roster so that they don't have to. They sort of guard against having to potentially reach for a player at a position of need. But I mean, what they have now is an upgrade over last season, to be clear. But it's arguable if it's going to be good enough to be able to contend with some of the better teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I would say that's being generous to call it arguable. Yeah, that is still a glaring weakness in my eyes. But, Nakobe's a little bit different because he's got to stay healthy, and we got to see what you have in Nakobe Dean. But
and by the way, I had a great chat with Ben Van Sumeren a few weeks ago. Yeah. I'm excited to see if he's able to maybe carve out a rotational sub-package role and get that speed on the field, man.
There's another guy
that the Eagles like him. They like him, and they invested in his development. I think he probably sticks as the final linebacker when it all is said and done.
I just took a quick look here because I didn't think it was much of a number, and it's not. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, 5 years in the league. Career sacks. Quick guess, Andrew D. How many do you think he's got? 5 years in the league. How many sacks?
0.
No, he's got slightly more than that.
Well, based on the way you set it up, I was going to say, I don't know, right. 0.
He's got 4 sacks in 5 years. So if he's the guy, he's going to be the one that no one's going to see coming. He's going to be the blitzer from the safety position.
Could be.
hasn't exactly been a forte of him
I
in his
wouldn't
career.
be
why
all.
not? Why not? Why not him? Well, you know what I mean? Like, this is a new system, and he's a player that is rangy. Why, it has to be somebody. Why not him?
Watching Vick's great defenses when he does, and I wouldn't be too worried about the blitz to begin with because he's not going to blitz a whole heck of a lot. But when he does
Right,
send,
but we understand, just so we know what we're talking about here. If you're dropping a defensive lineman in coverage, you're not going to blitz less. You're not going to blitz 3. You're going to bring 4. So somebody's going to come from somewhere else. Who is that guy if not a defensive lineman? That's the question I'm asking.
well, he generally does it. He generally does it when he's playing quarters coverage, and you're basically just playing the zone to be in a as they say, the quarter flat defender. You're basically just playing the zone. It could be a 3-man rush. It could be a 4-man rush. It could be a blitz. When he does tend to blitz, it tends to be the slot. So, that's another position. And Avonte Maddox was pretty good at that
He was
in a small sample size. Yeah, I'm starting to think, look, if he's still out there, take a flyer, 1-year minimum deal, bring him back and hope he can stay healthy. He can hang out with Dallas Goedert for another year. Why not?
You and I love Maddox, man. A great guy to talk to. Somebody who I think in a limited capacity where you can kind of preserve his skill set and his body, he might be able to give you something, especially the longer he sits out there. It's starting to look like it would be a favorable deal for whoever brings him in.
Yeah. And part of the problem with Avonte, I think, is he's so small and he thinks he's, 6 foot 210, and he plays like that. He plays a very physical style of football and susceptible to injury. So
he's extremely tough. I don't like the misconception out there that he's.
I can't stand it.
Yeah. It bothers me.
Yeah.
But he's got to be able to stay on the field. That's the whole thing. If you're playing him,
that's
minimum,
fair.
then
But
Andrew
probably gets the same thing every time he gets hurt. Oh, he's made of glass. Shut up.
They have no clue what they're talking about. He's as tough as there is. It's just some folks are a little bit more fortunate with injuries than others.
But I think if you're evaluating a player, you have to take it into consideration. How often is this guy hurt? If you're not, I think you're shirking your responsibility.
No, you certainly
as a talent evaluator. I'll go with you two guys on. It's because he plays as hard as he does that gets injured as often as he does. But if you get hurt, you get hurt. Doesn't matter whether you're made of glass.
No, that's ability is availability.
Yeah. Exactly.
A great football mind once said, or at least a great football mind in his own mind, we used to say.
I like Avonte Maddox as much as the next guy, but there's a reason why he's still sitting out there. If you don't think that reason is the 31 other teams in the NFL going, yeah, but the guy's always hurt, then you're just
they probably saw his medicals. Yeah, they're probably not good.
Yeah, they said we'll be in touch.
That's an issue. All right. Always a pleasure, Andrew D. Thank you very much for jumping in with us today. We'll definitely get you on again before the draft. Thanks for doing it.
At Andrew DiCecco, by the way, follow him on X, InsideTheBirds.com. Tremendous job on those pro days, Andrew. Nice job. Jeff Stout, Maryland, offensive line. I like it.
Check them out. Those they have some players there. 3 guys are going to be in camps. 2 of them will be drafted.
I got no problem with a Terp coming to Philadelphia. Andrew, good stuff. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
See you guys.
Andrew D. DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, Jody Mac coming back. We will put a bow on this show.